Yes, man. I am feeling better. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm feeling better. People were listening. We were meant to record last week. I was so sick, dude.
Oh man, you got kids. I mean, they bring all the sickness home.
Do you know what? I think it was actually someone from my football team because there were like two players who went down sick. And so I was meant to be on that interview with you, and I was so sick I just lay down on the couch and passed out. And then I woke up like 3 hours later and I saw that message and it was like, yeah, I'm in the studio waiting.
Well, luckily we have our own studio here, so it's trivial for me to come into the studio, right? There's no effort on my part. So and I'm happy you're feeling better, man. Just when you're sick like that, it's the worst.
I don't get sick often, and when I do, it's like 24 hours and I'm done. I can't work through sickness. I'm like, I'm done. I'm gonna put Netflix on and I'm gonna fall asleep on the couch.
Yeah. No, I get it. How's it been going? How's Bedford doing?
Mate, which one? The one you sponsor or the other one?
It's a good. How are they both doing?
Both teams are top of the league.
Let's go.
Their respective leagues, yeah.
Let's go.
So the men were third, and the team who were top didn't play, and we had games in hand, and there was a rain delay for the game last Saturday, and MK Irish, who were kind of like level points, level everything, they played before us, and they were 3-0 up when we started, and we knew we had to beat them by like 2 goals better to go top, and they finished 3-1 and we won 5-0. So yeah, we went top of the league, and the ladies have been top pretty much all season. So both teams now are top of their league, which is incredible. And obviously, big shout out to Galaxy, and thank you for Galaxy for sponsoring our ladies team, because it's enabled us to. We've put in the whole infrastructure for the ladies now that we have for the men's. We have similar stuff, like they shared a pitch and facilities, but they now have professional coaching, professional training, full match day experience the same. And this Sunday, they're in the first round. Have you ever heard of the FA Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're in the first round proper of the FA Cup. And our ladies are in the 5th tier of football, and they've drawn a team in the 3rd tier, so 2 below the Women's Premier League, where Man U, Chelsea, everyone is.
Yeah.
Tough game, but it's winnable, and they're getting the exact experience the same. So we're doing match programs, everything the same. Yeah,
I love it.
We're gonna have commentary of it. So
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that color commentary. Can't wait for it,
dude.
I gotta get the streams going more in our office too, because the times are very right. I mean, it's US It's US morning typically, or midday.
Yeah, so a weekend game on a Saturday doesn't really work for you, because that will be what's a 5-hour difference, or is it daylight saving now? So 4 hours, but 4 or 5 hour difference. Let's say 5.
Yeah,
7:45. So 2:45 on a Tuesday. On a Saturday, it's what's that 9?
Yeah, nighttime basically.
10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 11 in the morning on a Saturday.
But the Tuesday games, we got to get those up here in Galaxy HQ on the screens. I think we can do that.
Get them up, man. I'll remind you. I'll remind you on the next one.
Yeah, I love it. We're gonna do it.
But listen, if we get to the end of the season and both teams win their league, it's going to be incredible.
I can't wait. And that's right around. There's going to be an event in Bedford around then.
Yeah. So the ladies' season might have finished by then. It depends on fixtures and cups and stuff.
Pretty sure all the pubs in Bedford are going to be bought out and full if these teams win these cups. It's going to be amazing.
Listen, as long as my bar's full, then I'm happy. That's the one I want. But yeah, no, listen, thanks to Galaxy for everything, sponsoring this, because like I say, the women's game's been underfunded, and to have a Bitcoin company get behind it and support it is super cool. And I think people are starting to understand it now. They didn't get it before, right? I think people are starting to get this now. They're like, oh, I think I understand now. Because there's like 3 or 4 Bitcoin teams now. Like 2 have announced in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you were pointing that out. Is it in the Czech Republic, or where's the one? There's a new one.
Austria's one.
In Austria, yeah.
And the other one is it Bulgaria?
Bulgaria.
Yeah,
that's what it was, yeah.
And so
it's a cheat code. People love Bitcoin, okay? Like let's be real. They love Bitcoin, and it's global, and like it should be part of your brand, no matter what company you are. I want to start seeing everyone's got to embrace Bitcoin, at some point.
It's like the meat spaces, right? We got PubKey, we've got Nashville Bitcoin Park, we've got the Bitcoin Commons, we've got El Zonte. I think there's one in Portugal.
I've heard that, in Lisbon maybe. Yep.
Yeah, you get one and the others start popping up. And now we have one football team started. Now we have 3 or 4. And someone will do something else. Someone will do something, I don't know, to do with fishing or sailing. And then there'll be loads of sailing. Or you'll get a racing car driver and then you'll have 10 racing car drivers. It is a cheat code. And yeah, man, I'm loving it. Hey, listen, look, you haven't, you not got a rap for me.
Well, I think it's a little difficult remotely, but and I still jam that rap that we did on your episode when we were in Nashville together. I could probably come up with something if you give me a second.
Freestyle me a rap?
Maybe, yeah, but keep in mind, this is hard. My favorite part of that rap was rhyming Peter McCormack. That's really not very easy. And I said, even the doormat, because I said, I'm throwing the whole kitchen sink at you. I said, I'm throwing everything at you, the kitchen sink, the vacuum, even the doormat when I come to attack you, and Peter McCormack standing ready to slap you, and a whole menpool of homies in the back waiting to smack you, right? Like that is hard. That was a hard one, to be honest, Peter, because I also don't like to just do like ack, right? Like I like to do multisyllabic rhyme schemes, right? So Peter McCormack, even the doormat, right? And mostly because I grew up listening to Eminem, and that's like one of the core innovations that he really added to lyricism, was doing a lot of that. So I don't know, man, freestyling on this topic, it's.
Have you seen that interview he did when he was explaining how you can make anything rhyme with anything?
Was this when he said people say you can't rhyme anything with orange? He's like, yeah, you can't door hinge. I'm like, all right, true. But I think what they meant, the historic poets, that those aren't literal rhymes. They're adjacent rhymes or whatever you call it. I mean, of course, in rap, they work as rhymes, absolutely. But it's, technically like crook and spook they rhyme in a literal sense, but they don't audibly rhyme. I have seen him, though. He's a real nerd, Eminem, a true nerd for words. It's really fascinating.
Have you seen him live?
I've only seen him once live. What I really wanted to go to was he did I think it was Jay-Z and Eminem at Yankee Stadium. Yeah. That I wanted to go see, and I did not. I could not, unfortunately. But I have seen him live, and he was awesome. He did 35 songs or something, and he really just did the first 2/3 of every one. So you got the whole vibe of it, and then he was like, let's go to the next banger. And something I love about all concerts, when people have a big discography and they don't shy away from playing their hits. Like, we want to hear the new stuff, but we also want the hits, and he delivered.
Was that back when Proof was still with him?
No, this was I saw him not that long ago. Maybe 2019 is the first time I actually saw him live.
I saw him. Well, so firstly, the best venue in the UK is a place called the Brixton Academy. It's just an unbelievable venue. Everyone plays there at some point. I saw the Beastie Boys there. It's still my best concert ever. And when I was at university, some lad said, I'm going to go and see Eminem in London at Brixton. Do you want to come? I was like, I don't know if I can be bothered. I didn't go. And he come back and he was like, that was the greatest concert ever.
I mean, I wanted to see the Up in Smoke tour. You remember that one they did?
With Ice Cube and Cypress Hill?
Yeah, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. I think Eminem went on it. I think maybe D12 went too. I can't remember. They later did a D12 Eminem tour also. But, that was that was the real deal.
I saw D12 at Brixton Academy, and the whole show, everyone's just like, is he going to come out and do a song? did
we like D12, but there's the one guy we like the most.
Yeah.
Please
bring him out.
He should probably come out. Yeah.
No, I saw him play. There's a place called the Milton Keynes Bowl. It's not far from where I live. He played there with Cypress Hill and Exhibit.
I mean, dude, Exhibit was so good back in the day, too. I mean, Cypress Hill, obviously, too, but what a show. I mean, what a show.
And that was when Proof was, before Proof was killed.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Good. Man, I could talk about hip-hop for an hour with you.
It's not what hip-hop did, though, is it? Is that what's happening? You opening up a new franchise?
I think hip-hop's gone so fiat.
Yeah, dude, it actually has. I think Eminem and Logic and people like Joyner Lucas and others have been, I would say, pushing back, right? And it's not just they push back against the auto-tune mumble rap, sort of trap mumble rap scene, but there's still a vibrant lyricism community, but I agree. I mean, everything is auto-tune,
bullshit.
Whiny, sing-songy stuff.
Yeah, I'm always arguing with Danny. Who's it he likes? Is it Drake? Is that Drake he's always telling me he likes? some album To Kill a Butterfly or something.
That's Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick
I do
Lamar's,
I like Kendrick. I would put Kendrick in that lyricist group as well.
So he keeps telling me like Kendrick's the one.
I love Kendrick. I think he's excellent.
Yeah.
I would say with Drake, like, I mean, look, Drake does a lot also for the under the freestyle rap battle community. So like King of the Dot, people should check out KOTD on YouTube. By the way, people don't the frontier of rap battle now is not actually freestyle, because over the years people would cheat and they would write their lyrics, right? So instead what you do now is you get told the top tier of the world's battle rappers, they actually get told their opponent, like, I don't know, some do it 24 hours before, some do it 36 hours before, and then you write for it. So you actually write and then prepare. You don't get to hold the writing with you, right? So it's a performance art, basically. So you write your verses ahead of time, and this is the biggest league is, or whatever it's called, I don't know if it's called a league, is King of the Dot, KOTD, which Drake is a big supporter of, so I like that about here. But what I don't like about Drake, first of all, I just happen to not like a lot of his music, although some of it's, I like some of it. I don't like that in that first single of his, Forever, he has this line, he says, "Everybody got a deal, I did it without one." But on that first single is Eminem, Kanye West, right? And you're like, what do you mean you did it without one? By the way, dog, you were on Degrassi. You're like a Disney kid. Don't tell me you did it without a deal, you know? Like, bro, like you had the top rappers in the world featured on your first single. Like, so I still am bugged about that, even though it was like 10 plus years ago.
Did you ever come across a freestyle battle rapper called Arsenal?
No.
I met him on queuing up for a water slide at Disney. Yeah.
I see him here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. I've seen he's battled some of the people I know. Cassidy, B Magic. I follow some of these guys. So
yeah. So I'm in this queue for this water slide and chatting away to this guy. We're chatting for about 10 minutes, and then I said, "What do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a rapper. I'm a battle rapper." I was like, "What? Who are you?" He's like, "Well, my name's Arsenal." I was like, "What, like the football team?" He's like, "Similar." I think he's spelled
a little different, but yeah.
Yeah, funny, man, funny. Do you battle rap? Do you actually get out?
No. I don't really rap. Like,
rap.
Well, I do. That's true, but it's not my job. Like, right? I mean, I only rap on my own platform. Sometimes my friends' platforms. Right? It's not I actually have a day job. Right. Actually, I never really have performed live in my whole rap career, but I've been rapping, except for a couple times like in high school. I've been rapping since I was 14 years old, and I've been making beats since I was about like 18. So, because I play the piano and the drums and the guitar, I don't actually, all of those beats get made on a MIDI keyboard at this point, right? I'm not actually like recording live instrumentation. I'm playing all the instruments as if I'm playing the piano, right? But, yeah, I never actually, I mean, in fact, most of the rap music I've recorded, I've never actually released to anywhere, right? It's not on YouTube. It's not like, so actually the Galaxy Brains, we're coming up, I think, on our 90th episode, and I didn't really start rapping on it until the beginning of this year, so it'll be like 45 episodes in a row that we've rapped on. And
dude, there's a mixtape in that.
I think we're actually I'm gonna ask our producers to cut a mixtape together of it, right? Because like there are some bangers out there that I really like personally.
You could do one copy and auction it, like the Wu-Tang.
Interesting. Who owns that album now, by the way? Didn't Martin Shkreli buy it at one point?
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Didn't he pay like $2 million for it?
Yeah, but then he either sold it or lost it when he went to jail or something. But like, I want to I don't need to own it. I just want to hear it. You know,
I bet the album sucks.
I love the Wu-Tang. The Wu-Tang Clan is touring right now.
Have you seen them live? They suck live. They are terrible.
I've never seen them live.
They suck live. They
the RZA,
so
the Jizza,
bad.
Redman, Method Man, like, you know, these guys are all great in the scheme of things. Actually, they have one of the highest like diversity of language used. Like, so if you do like a word map of rappers, Eminem's pretty high. I think A$AP Rock, who's one of my favorite, not A$AP Rocky, but A$AP Rock, who's a phenomenal rapper. Huge fan of him for years. He has maybe the highest like diversity of word use, but the RZA is like way up there too. Like this was really intelligent rap, even though the topics might not have been. Anyway.
Dude, you could have been touring the world rather than dealing with this Bitcoin bullshit. The Wu-Tang suck live. Never go and see them live. You get like, I saw them. You had 8 of them. The only one who wasn't there was ODB. Yeah. They didn't want to be there. They didn't do the songs properly. They're not. I can imagine when they first came out and they would go on stage somewhere like New York and play Protect Your Neck, it would be like insane.
Yeah.
But by the time
I saw them, I can imagine as well.
Who before we get into Bitcoin, because there'll be some people getting furious right now that we're not talking.
They're
going to
be in the YouTube comments like, when the hell did they start talking about Bitcoin?
Yeah, they'll like put a timestamp. Bitcoin starts.
What hip hop did?
What hip hop did?
They will. Don't worry. Yeah, I've seen that. By the way, they did it the last time. They were like, oh, this guy can rap, but like, there's a Bitcoin podcast, and you and Danny or somebody are in the comments like, guys, just like that's why we put the sections. You can skip forward. You don't have to listen to the banter on rap music. We just both like rap music.
Calm down, homie. Who's your most like underrated rapper, you think?
Underrated is a tough word because I was going to say, I mentioned A$AP Rock. I think he's not nearly as well known as he should be, but he's not underrated. Anyone who knows he's a genius, right? But I think the album, The Impossible Kid from A$AP Rock, I think it might have been like 2017. It might be my single favorite album of any genre ever. It's an absolute masterpiece. People should listen to it. The lyricism and storytelling is just incredible.
He's done a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's been around for years. He's got albums out the waz.
I can't even.
I love this album, The Impossible Kid. Absolutely brilliant album. Truly.
The Impossible.
He's got a song on there about his cat called Kirby.
I got it.
It's great song. He's got a song about going to the psychiatrist. It's hilarious. He's got, I mean, it's just a great album. Like, the stories are incredible.
If this is your favorite album, I'm going for it.
Yeah, this might be my favorite album ever. I mean, I like a lot of albums, but,
The one I always liked, I never thought blew up like you should, was Chino XL.
Yeah. I don't know him well, but I remember. I also like Chameleonaire. I was a big fan if we go back a little bit.
Yeah, God, yeah.
A lot of the Dirty South stuff, like 3-6 Mafia, Zero, DJ Screw, like a bunch of the Houston rap scene.
Was that Bubba Sparks as well?
I think no. Bubba was a. I thought he was a production of Timbaland. He came.
He was. Yeah, no, he was.
Yeah.
But because R.A. with the Rugged Man goes on about like Eminem having Dre and Bubba having Timbaland. He hasn't got anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a tag team.
R.A. the Rugged Man messages me occasionally.
Dude, I love R.A., by the way. That's a great he's got this song called Make You Famous that I'm not going to say the lyrics to, but it's one of my favorite songs. Phenomenal. And he's great. I mean, R.A. is sick. He's awesome.
Yeah, he keeps messaging me about Bitcoin and stuff sometime. And he keeps saying, like, let's get on the show. And we were meant to meet up in London. He was like, dude, do you want to meet up and go for dinner? And I was in London. I was like, yeah, but I might like completely piss my pants in front of you.
Yeah. But what hip hop did. This
what
is a new franchise.
Yeah, man. Right. We should talk about Bitcoin for the furious people listening in.
Do we have to?
Every 5 minutes, we should go back to hip hop.
No. We'll relent for the YouTube commenters.
There we go. So, no, price action's been good since I saw you last, man. It's been frothy and good.
I think there's a lot of factors at play. Obviously, the ETF as a narrative potential catalyst is, I think, probably the main one. But you also have interesting shifts in the macro environment. I think like U.S. data is softening a bit. So is global data. And, the Fed last week, in their most recent FOMC, they basically are really hinting now that rates do not have to go up higher. So like, they will probably stay, they're insisting that they'll stay higher for longer. But point being is if you have an ETF catalyst that's an inflow driver, right? Like there's an accessibility issue that occurs, which could cause inflows, right? It's not just a news event. It's one that could drive inflows. Then you've got the halving also in April, right? Which is probably right around, my guess as to when ETFs will really start showing inflows. It's going to take a couple months, regardless of when they're approved. Like, they probably take a little while to like get going, like the businesses and the advisors got to like look into it and figure it out. And then you've got maybe a softening rate environment that could be conducive for risk assets in general. Like I think the picture looks pretty good for Bitcoin price over the next 6 to 9 months for sure.
Heading into an election.
People have asked me this, like, did Satoshi make the 4-year halving cycle right around? Because every halving comes 6 months before ish. I mean, it's always quite interesting.
Yeah. So somebody sent me that once, and they said everyone thinks that the halving is what drives the price action. They said actually no, it's the election, because in an election year, there's a loosening of economic policy.
Typically, yeah. And no, there's plenty. I think if you look at rates also, there's a lot of correlation between the rates markets and Bitcoin price. I don't think the halving, and certainly now, I mean, the halving on an absolute basis is a pretty small supply reduction, right? I mean, theoretically, the average is what, like 900 coins or whatever from new issuance, and it goes down to 450 after the halving per day. That's a tiny portion of daily traded Bitcoin volume, even in this low liquidity environment that the market is in. But I think to me, it's more about the narrative event, right? Like if you had last time, the halving occurred right as the Fed was lifting off with the biggest money printing bonanza in human history. Like that juxtaposition is iconic, right? It's so easy to tell the story. I think of it more as a quadrennial marketing event for Bitcoin at this point.
Look, I'll take it. If every 4 years the price goes up, I know I have to sit on my hand for 3 years, survive.
It's just a very scarce asset. It truly is, right? I mean, there's really not, they're not making a lot more of it. And soon, I mean, in practical terms, like they're going to be done. They are going to be done making new Bitcoin like in 5 years. I mean, like I think we'll hit 99% of the supply in just a couple years, right? So like really there's not a lot left. And, you know, that causes volatility because the supply is totally inelastic, right? If everybody decides like they did in 2017 or in 2021 that they want Bitcoin now, like that's a huge influx of demand. But miners can't produce more of it to meet that demand, right? So that inelastic supply is why it's volatile. Like demand causes volatility because there's no, even gold, which is, you know, famously scarce. Like if there's a sustained long-term increase in bids for gold, miners will mine more gold. Like it's slower. It's then, you know, it's not like we can produce more widgets, right, more quickly. It doesn't scale like software, for example, or anything. But so it is scarce, but it's not perfectly inelastic, right? Like their miners will scale up or scale down in gold. They can't in Bitcoin. No amount of hash rate can really, you know, dominate or fundamentally change the supply schedule. And so like that, so I agree. I mean, look, I mean, we don't know where price goes, but I know that there's not going to be a lot of it. And I believe pretty firmly that over time, demand for Bitcoin will continue to rise. So like that dynamic is pretty straightforward in my mind.
Well, I'm going to speak for Danny because he's not here. Danny has never been so bullish.
Right now, you mean? Than he is now?
Yeah.
So this is a Danny signal right now.
He sleeps bullish. In his dream, Bitcoin's going up right now. He's sat there thinking about it. But we were having a conversation this week because there's this building that's become available. Well, I know that's available to buy in Bedford, right? And it's got this like prime real estate front window that wraps around 2 streets. And right now, a Vegas slots company is trying to get it, right? And we've had a death of our high streets. I don't know if it's the same in America, but these traditional shopping high streets have been dying. You know, people don't go there and buy clothes anymore, so you tend to get a lot of betting shops. I don't know if betting shops are a big thing in the US. But
not really. I think online here is bigger. But so you're talking about like a casino is going to be put in there?
No, it's like betting slips, so mainly sports betting. So you'll get people, they'll go in there and they'll be watching horse racing or sports. And when they're watching
food and drinks too?
No, it's like pretty degenerate.
Sounds a pretty bleak place. Like
no, they are. They are
bunch of gambling addicts sitting around watching sports and and not even any food or drinks.
No, I don't think so. And they just go in and bet. And so we get a lot of those. We get charity shops and a few other things. But like these high streets have died and the quality of the shops has gone down. But this one, like, it's the best shop front in my hometown. Like I say, it wraps 2 of the most important streets. And this thing called Vegas Slots applied for it, which is it's like that is like a mini casino, but it's not really a casino. It's just the we call them fruit machines, the slot machines you have.
Okay.
And it's just
because they have the fruit cherries and bananas or whatever. Yeah.
And so there's just those, and there's like 50 of them in there, and people go in there, they lose their money and leave, right? But they're not good, and they're trying to get it. And I was like, saying to Danny, I was like, I think I want to buy this place because, you know, I'd like to be able to, you know, like make it something else, like a nice cafe or something.
Yeah.
I was like, but it's not cheap because you got to buy the whole building. I was like, well, I'm probably gonna have to sell some Bitcoin to do it. He's like, dude, if you sell Bitcoin to do this now, you're an idiot.
I try never to sell Bitcoin. I've told this story before, but I sold a lot of Bitcoin years ago. I made money on a trade, but like it was before I really understood Bitcoin deeply, and I've tried never to sell it since then. If I did have to sell it or want to sell it, I would want to buy something that was real and hard, right? So for example, real estate. However, I'd also, if it's a building, I hope it's made out of stone or brick, Pete. It's not
it is, man.
Like vinyl siding, you know? Yeah.
It's proper,
So if it's
proper
a
old
nice
school.
stone building, like, I mean, that's what we're talking. I mean, that's a hard asset. That's hard money, basically, like bricks, stone, marble, like something that can last.
Yeah. I mean, it is a proper building
Sick.
made with bricks.
No, I'm saying, not vinyl siding like American houses that are actually designed to degrade after a 30-year mortgage.
But it's a business as well. Like above the shop front, there's a number of flats that are fully rented out.
So you could lease them out to what? Is it all commercial?
They already are. They're already fully leased out, all of them. And
oh, yeah. So, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I do like cash flow generating businesses.
Exactly. And the cash flow of this pays the mortgage. So over 15 years, you end up owning the building. So it makes sense logically. But Danny's right. He's also like, you've got to sell X Bitcoin to cover the deposit.
Right now.
And if the price of Bitcoin triples, you could have bought the building for the same amount of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. But like it might not be available. I might miss out on it.
Yeah. Could take 15 more years or longer.
Yeah. I tell you why I sell Bitcoin. I sell Bitcoin to do special things, like on a cool holiday, or buy special gifts for people. Like I got my dad a car once, and knowing that the amount I spend comes off the bottom, and I would never have got to spend that amount anyway, ever. I would never have reached that amount.
Mm-hmm.
I sell some.
Yeah, I mean, I to be clear, I'm not like saying people should. I've seen people say that. I've seen some influential people say that you should hold until you die and never spend and give all your Bitcoin to your future generations. You certainly can do that. But I think, risk management is a real thing as well, right? I mean, to be clear, if you need money and you have an asset and you need cash instead or something else instead, right? Then you should think about investing as a diversification and long-term success of you and your family, right, and your goals. So I'm certainly not someone who shames someone for spending Bitcoin. I'd rather sell something else before that, and I mean that's what I would do, right, to the extent I can.
Well, Danny's like
I'm so long-term bullish on Bitcoin. I just want my number to go up, my stack to go up.
He's like halving, election year, BlackRock ETF, macro cycle. He's like, this is the worst time ever in the history of Bitcoin to sell Bitcoin.
I do think it's but that's annoying. Buildings are. I mean, that building might not come up for sale. First of all, literally ever again in your lifetime as possible.
Ever again,
or it could be like 20 years from now, right? You're like, damn. You just don't know.
I'll probably be dead.
Also, I like your thought though about keeping some, relatively throwing no shade on that business, but like keeping a relatively skeezy, shady kind of like annoying business that actually diminishes the quality of your downtown. That there is that aspect too.
Yeah, and then if I get it up in time for cheat code, we can take everyone there and they can have coffee.
I love it.
Pay with Bitcoin. All right, man, we should talk about this ETF. Has anything substantial happened since we last spoke? Because it seems like price has responded to the rumors, but
I think
there's nothing definite.
Yeah, there's not a lot that's definite yet. I think we spoke in July, so obviously the grayscale ruling has happened since then, which I think a lot of people know. If you're on Bitcoin Twitter, you've seen plenty of analysis, but it was quite a significant like smackdown of the SEC's position by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. Like the ruling basically negates the SEC's the two main reasons they've been denying ETFs for 10 years. It negates them, right? The regulated market of sufficient size with surveillance sharing agreements. They also, the judges on the panel, which was a 3-0 ruling, right? These are bipartisan judges appointed by both Democrats and Republicans. They expressed confusion and almost shock that the SEC would have approved futures-based ETFs and not spot-based ETFs. And they literally say, like, CME price of Bitcoin has been shown to be like mathematically identical. Like there shouldn't be any, like if you can approve that, you should approve spot, right? And so that obviously is what set off, anticipation and excitement in the Bitcoin community and also the market. Is not just that, I don't even think it's a grayscale story. It's more of an SEC's argument story. When you really started thinking about what the implications were of the order, it meant that they can't deny them for the main two reasons they've been denying them for 10 years, right? So theoretically, the idea was they could come up with some other reason to deny, but the court specifically said that their justification for denying, in that case, Grayscale's conversion was literally arbitrary and capricious. Don't tell me that court's going to be happy. I don't think that court would be happy if they pull a rabbit out of a hat and come up with an argument they haven't made in 10 years, right, of looking at this, a new reason to deny, right? So I think the market came to that realization over September and October, and that's been helping fuel this rally.
Well, so what's happened since it? Has there been any other denials of any other applications? Because look, I don't keep track of them. As far as I know, there's like 10, 12, 15 of them.
Yeah, so you've got two different processes, right? You've got what's called the 19B4 process, which is one application. That's the one that the exchanges like CBOE and NYSE and NASDAQ, they ask the SEC for permission to list the product. Then you've got the S1 process, which is the actual applicants basically seeking to create effectively a new public company whose sole purpose is to be an ETF, right? Like that's what they effectively are, not dissimilar applications from what like a company attempting to go public would also have to file. Those are handled by two different parts of the SEC. So the 19B4 is reviewed by the Division of Trading and Markets, and the S1s are reviewed by the Division of Corporate Finance. So it's the 19B4s that come with those timelines, those dates that have to either be, they can be approved or delayed, and then eventually approved or denied, right? So like that's all part of the 19B4 process. The S1s don't have a date like that, right? I mean, it could take however long it takes, right? What's happened is in the past, for those 10 years since the Winklevoss ETF was filed, the SEC has never commented on or sent comments back to the applicant issuers on their S1s. Instead, what they've done is just delayed, and then denied the 19B4s. They've never commented on the S1s at all. And then what happened in early October, Bloomberg reported this, right, that the SEC was sending comments back to the issuers on the S1s. And that, again, because that's never happened before, I think that really helped accelerate in October, which was I think, what were we, plus 30% in October or something? I mean, we had a huge move in October. I think that was something that really started to solidify that, like, this is, at least this time is different. Timing is still up in the air and other questions, but like the SEC is handling this differently than they did in prior years. They've never commented on the S1. So then you started throughout October, and even recently you started to see, we didn't know, like market observers, they don't know what the comments are, like, you know, but bullish that they are apparently talking to the issuers about it, at least, right? Not just ignoring, delaying, and denying. But then what we started to see was the issuers were filing amendments to their existing S1s, right? So they were updating them. And we assume some of that is in response to whatever the SEC's comments were, right? So then we start looking at what all of those amended S1s say and look at the difference between the original filing and the update, right? Because just look for clues as to what might be on the SEC's mind, right, et cetera. So, I mean, I've got a team of researchers, so I've got the bandwidth to do that. And so we started looking at them, and at this point, most of them have filed an amendment. And we started looking, and those amendments are pretty benign. It doesn't look like there's a showstopper in there. It's mostly them adding additional risk disclosures, right? And those things can be like all over the place. This is like for investors. So you'd say, like, for example, there's stuff, add a paragraph about Bitcoin could be used for illicit activity, and that could cause like political blowback on it that could harm the value of Bitcoin or blah, blah, blah.
Right,
like, there's stuff about mining, and like there's literally sections about hard fork risk. And one issue I saw had a whole section about open source governance, the open source software. They're like, well, there's no corporate board behind Bitcoin. So like who, you know, literally, I mean, all that stuff is actually kind of interesting, but it's benign, right? It doesn't lead, and also issuers and companies will typically just list as many risks as they can even come up with, because the whole point is to disclose as many possible risks, right? So that you're being as upfront as possible with investors about. So it's not even that they think these are like big risks. They're just saying as many. So stuff like that. It was things like clarifying how the ETFs are going to price their Bitcoin net asset value. Like, oh, like instead of using like this index, we're going to use that index. Like, so when you started seeing those, and the fact that they were so benign, it's like, well, if they're in contact and these are the types of things they're adding, like this seems like the process is now moving, like that there is a definitive change in behavior from the SEC on their approach to how to handle these issuers. So that, I would say that's the main thing that's happened. Beyond that, like, I mean, from actual like data points, not much has changed other than those amended files. First, it was the comments reportedly sent to them, and then we watched for a couple of weeks as a bunch of amendments were filed. I think theoretically we're waiting to see probably there's another round of comments maybe. So in a few weeks or so, there may be another round of amended S1s. Like that's the process that's ongoing.
What do you think strategically the SEC were playing at in that they would delay, deny? It kind of came across that they were against it. I wonder if it was like political. You know, people have talked about Gensler having kind of like political ambitions, maybe to be Treasury Secretary or something at some point.
I mean,
we know that Elizabeth
keep in mind,
Warren
Jay
has got her
Clayton's SEC
anti-crypto
also
army.
did this, right? Like it's not just Gensler. The SEC before Gensler had this a similar posture. So I don't think. Look, I mean, I think there were unknown questions. Like the market has market infrastructure has also significantly matured certainly since the Winklevoss ETF, right? It wasn't like since that application in 2013, maybe 14. You know, Mt. Gox was still around or whatever. So like I think there's reasons why like it didn't make sense in the past and now it does make sense, I think. So I don't want to ascribe any, personal motive in general, but I do think the court case, like, I mean, the fact that they're moving after the case, like the Grayscale case in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, like that's telling, like that we're not crazy. Like we read the ruling and like we think we see what it says, and like now we have a different approach from the SEC. Like they're effectively having to comply with, and react to that ruling. So it's nice to see that we're not insane when we read it, that we're like, I'm pretty sure this tells the SEC to pound sand, that we weren't wrong when we read it and we thought it said that.
The SEC didn't appeal the Grayscale ruling, did they?
They did not appeal it. No, they had 45 days to file notice of an appeal. I don't think they actually had to file their appeal, and they didn't. And the court did what's called certifying the order or the ruling, which just basically stamps it, being like, okay, like there's no appeal, like we're good to go. Like what we said is the order. They could appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court. They won't though.
Is Grayscale's litigation with the SEC done now then?
On that issue, it is done, I believe. There's no, I don't know that there's anything else. I'm just saying, yes, I think that on that case is done. I mean, either side theoretically can appeal. I mean, at this point, because they didn't ask for a full hearing of the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, they can't appeal there any longer. So they could. This is a 3-judge panel in appeals court, so like they could have actually asked for the entire court to listen. That they didn't do, so that's off the table. I think either side could appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. I would put those odds at less than like 0.1% that would happen.
Okay. So what's the next step for Grayscale though?
No one really knows what's been happening. They had sent a letter, I think, to the SEC that they released publicly, and you could see in the like in early September, just basically being like, like given the ruling, like you should like call us, right? I haven't heard anything else since then. So I mean, there's questions about, one thing we've watched is like, because we don't know, like, do they need to refile? Like, I mean, their 19B4 process expired in summer 2022 when it was and was denied, right? So like, but then this vacates the denial. So like, is it just live again? It's just really not clear. I think if they did refile, it would be a pretty positive sign, because as far as I'm assuming, as far as they're concerned, they don't have to refile because they already filed and it was denied, but that denial is now gone. So like, shouldn't it just be live again, right? I think if they were to refile, that would be an indication that they've received direct instructions from the SEC that they should refile, and it'll be more constructive or positive this time, right? Because why would they refile? They're holding a court ruling that says the denial was wrong to do. So like, I don't know why they would refile unless they had like assurances that there will be a positive outcome.
Some people have said though that they don't actually think an ETF is great for Grayscale, in that at the moment it's like it's a pension fund that they get to take 2% out of in perpetuity. If it becomes a ETF, then people can there is a possibility of redemptions. And so actually like an ETF for Grayscale is worse. I haven't always bought that, because I always felt like if Grayscale got the ETF when there wasn't BlackRock around, then they'll have their inflows anyway, so they would do well out of it. But I think the kind of like the playing field's changed a bit at the moment. So it was a bit of a strange one. I didn't even know if the like Grayscale litigation was some kind of distraction tactic from everything else that was going on with Genesis.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to understand the case that people are making to you when they say that it might not be good
Yeah.
for them, right? I mean, they're charging what, 2 or 2.5%? I can't remember, 2% on the trust products.
Yeah, it's 2%, but it was really 4% with the discount, right?
Yeah, so the trust products are profitable for them. They
Mm.
certainly are when they're growing, but the fees are high, and the fees are much likely to be much lower on these other ETF products when they launch. You know, potentially a lot lower, right? Less than half, I would say, most likely, under 1%. I think personally, I'm thinking these fees will end up higher than like an equity ETF because it is trickier. It's trickier than owning stocks for the issuers, right? Like buying, selling Bitcoin, custodying it, like doing create redeems with a digital asset like Bitcoin versus like an equity that trades on the New York Stock Exchange. It is difficult. It's more difficult than others. So I don't think they're going to go to like, 10 basis points, but I think they'll be sub 1% most likely. So that's less than half the revenue Grayscale would see, right? But on the other hand, look, I mean, I just have to take them at their word in this. Like they have been calling for an ETF conversion for like 5 years or something at this point. So I mean, and look, they're in it now. I mean, they sued in federal court to get
And won.
and won to get it vacated. So their denial vacated. So I think they have to think like probably the other issuers do, that it's a big potential market and they maybe have a head start. And I think that's got to be what they're thinking, in my opinion. But
well, that's another tricky part for the SEC, right? Because if they give one an approval ahead of everyone else, it wins the race, right? It becomes the biggest, most liquid one. And so
it's a good question.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah,
one of the rumors I've heard is the fact that it's all taking some time is like they're trying to get everyone lined up the same so they can approve them all at the same time and like just create a race.
Yeah, I think they probably do want to approve them all at the same time if they can. But on the other hand, among the issuers, you have some issuers that already run products like this, right? Literally, right? Like 21 Shares runs ETPs all over Europe. Galaxy does, and not with Invesco, but Galaxy Invesco is one of the applicants. Like Galaxy trades an ETF in both Canada and Brazil. Like so, like other Fidelity has a Canadian ETF, right? Like so, some of the issuers from an operational standpoint literally already know how to do this. Then also some of the issuers are big giant shops that do ETFs all the time, right? So like them doing all the paperwork, like at BlackRock or at Fidelity or at Invesco, like this is a lot different than a itty bitty issuer having to do all this paperwork, right? So I think it's truly much easier for the big issuers to issue ETFs and do all the legal work and answer all these amendments and do these filings than it is for smaller ones. So yeah, I think the SEC almost certainly would like to have them all launch at the same time. On the other hand, I think if there's one or two laggards like taking too long, like or something like that, then they may not all launch at the same time, even if they're perhaps approved at the same time, right? So you just have to wait and see. But I mean, I think frankly, there's a lot of high-powered, mature issuers like at this point, and so or applicants, I should say, to issue this. I think they would like to do it at the same time. That's true, and I think, but that puts the SEC theoretically on like the lowest common denominators timeline, and I think there is a possibility if one of them is a laggard in all the paperwork and stuff, they may move forward like and approve without that person.
Yeah, but all the others maybe at the same time. Maybe doesn't Larry Fink do like an annual letter?
I don't know.
I'm sure I've heard about it. He does like this annual letter that goes out.
I mean, I don't think he'd be on television saying Bitcoin's a flight to quality, part of a flight to quality trade if BlackRock wasn't very bullish on approval, right? I mean, I just think, the funny thing with like Fidelity is they've just been bullish on Bitcoin for so long that it's like it doesn't really like move the needle anymore when we hear that they're bullish, right? But like Larry Fink was opposed to it publicly several years ago. And now he's saying it's part of a flight to quality trade. So it's like, that's what he said, flight to quality. And you're like, they must think it's going to be approved, right? I mean, I don't understand why. Because I was like blown away by that statement he made, actually. I was like, this is significantly more bullish than I expected. And by the way, then we even need, like, thank you for realizing the fundamental value of Bitcoin, that it truly is a stable and transparent store of value at its system level. That's what I'm hearing. That's why I think it's a flight to quality, because I can store it, send it like securely, like self-sovereign wise, globally. Like to me, that does make it a flight to quality. But like, gosh, I didn't Like he went farther than we even needed. I was like,
I know.
they must genuinely believe that at this point. There's been the orange pill has been taken down. Maybe he's been down at PubKey drinking the orange pill drink, you know?
Dude, he spoke like he just had dinner with Michael Saylor.
Yeah. I'm saying it's like we don't even need this. Like this is even farther than you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he compared it to cash and gold basically as part of a flight to quality trade, which is just truly, I mean, my gosh, like we were at the point where this, you know, like during the bear market between 2013 and 17, it was like, you know, Bitcoin's for criminals. Now it's like largest asset manager on earth says it's part of a flight to quality trade. It's truly remarkable.
Yeah. I wonder if he's like been truly orange pilled. Like someone's really sat him down and truly orange pilled him, explained the fundamentals of Bitcoin, and he cares about the asset, or someone sold it to him and say, look, if BlackRock does this, like it's happening anyway, BlackRock has to do this, and if we do it, this is what it's going to do to our business. And I kind of like, I'm not 100% convinced he's like fully orange pilled in terms of himself versus orange pilled in terms of what it can do for BlackRock.
I'm sure he's had the conversations. There are, as you know, I mean, at this point, like being into Bitcoin is no longer a niche thing. There's plenty of, you know, finance and investor types that are, you know, probably friendly with Larry Fink that love it. Right? We hear this. Right? I mean, whether it's the Druckenmillers or Paul Tudor Jones. I mean, it's not a niche thing, so it wouldn't be hard for him to be orange pilled, right? But they obviously see opportunity as well.
It could be a pretty weird time for us all when, and like, let's say if, but we assume it will, and when it is approved. Like, I can't predict, I can't foresee what's going to happen, but some people seem to think. I mean, didn't you come out? What did you come out and say that 14 billion of inflows in year one?
That's what and I think, to be clear, like this was a pretty conservative estimate, or at least I will say the methodology we used was intentionally conservative, right? Like we said, so we only looked at, I agree. I mean, that's what we said. We said 14 billion in inflows in year one, ramping to like 38 billion in inflows, not cumulative value, inflows in year three. And it's truly going to be a very different time in Bitcoin's history. I mean, this is like that. We think that what we did is we looked at what groups of investor types would have the most net new access because of the approval of an ETF product, right? So like we can already buy on River or Swan or Cash App, right? Like we don't have an issue, you and I, directly buying some Bitcoin. So, but I mean, to be clear, there are like maybe you have a retirement account you can't buy Bitcoin in and you'd like to buy it. So maybe the ETF, like we didn't even look at retail at all. And then we also said if you're like the top size of investor, like the allocators, the sovereign wealth funds, the pensions and whatnot. Now, most of them don't have exposure today, but they are sophisticated enough to do like a private placement and like a private Bitcoin fund, right?
Of course.
The segment, if they want to, they certainly have the time and the money and the lawyers to like read the documents and like, you know, give it to one of the many companies that offer private funds. The segment that can't really do either is advisors, right? So financial advisors, wealth management, right? So that we looked at the U.S. wealth management market. We broke it down into three categories: banks and broker-dealers, broker-dealers, banks, and independent advisors. So the broker-dealers are like, examples are like the big like bank platforms that have advisors, you know, like, I don't know, Merrill Lynch, right? Like, or whatever, Morgan Stanley. The advisors at these platforms, the menu of investable options is set by the platform, right? So if they don't have a Bitcoin option on the platform, they don't have a way to present it to their clients to even consider it, right? Like that. And I mean, some of them do have some of the private funds on their platforms, but many don't, and most don't. And they're not able to buy the trust products or the cash settled futures ETFs. They're just not on those platforms. I'm not aware that they're on any of those platforms. And maybe with a specific exception, you could get it added for a client. But a lot of these advisors manage portfolios for perhaps hundreds of clients. They actually sometimes need to do it like they might move all their clients into one investment or all of them out of one investment and rebalance all of them at once, right? Like they need to use stuff that's on their platforms. They can't be going through a bespoke approval process every time somebody wants to do something, right?
Yeah.
And then the independent RIAs, these are like Peter McCormack, financial advisor. You have a storefront, right? Well, you don't have a back office. You're not affiliated with a big bank or broker dealer whose tech you can use, who you can send wires from. So what you typically do is use a platform like Fidelity or Pershing or Schwab. They basically white label their platforms, and you can like just use that. So you can get sub accounts and like basically use that. Those platforms probably do have some access to other types of products, maybe not the trust products, but maybe the futures ETFs. However, and they're probably going to add support when spot ETFs are maybe like right away, like theoretically, or pretty fast, right? Because you're totally independent. They're really a service provider. They don't, to my knowledge, they don't perform the same level of like suitability oversight on the RRAs that use the platform the way the advisors that are literally affiliated employees of the big banks and broker dealers have to do it, right? So the bar, I would say, is probably a little lower for what like what can get through as a thing. So they'll probably add it really fast. And that's how we come up with this ramp. We basically say, we look at the list of the biggest banks and broker dealers and like these wealth management platforms, and we start handicapping, like in some cases looking literally at the names from insights that we have, or looking at public statements. Oh, like the CEO of this bank like hates Bitcoin. They probably will be a laggard, right? Let's put them in year 2 or 3 of adding it, right? Whereas, oh, this one we know already has private funds. They'll probably turn it on for their platform in the first year, right? So that's how we like, it's pretty basic assumptions on ramping that addressable market. We actually then say, okay, for whatever capital we say is addressable in each of these years, just 10% choose to do an average of 1%, 10% of the capital. So 1 in 10 do 1% allocation, right? 1% is pretty straightforward. We have a whole separate report saying that like that was a really good percentage, like just looking backwards, mathematically speaking. And then 10% is just back of the napkin, like let's just say like 1 in 10 choose to put something in Bitcoin. Like that seems pretty conservative in my mind, right? And that's how we get to that inflows number of 14 and up to 38.
Yeah, but I still think your 75% increase is pretty bearish, because I tell you why, because that's just, you've just calculated based on where you think a conservative level of inflows will come in. But then you know what happens when the price starts to move? We get a lot of media interest, we get a lot of retail interest, we get a lot of FOMO, and everything else goes bananas. So it could lead to all kinds of other inflows.
I totally agree. I think we were looking for just a methodology that was defensible. Like, I mean, I think if you told me, I mean, 75% from when we wrote it would put us only up at like in the 50s, right? So,
we could be there in a couple of weeks.
I think we could easily go higher than that. I think we were just trying to, like, keep in mind too, right? Like even our inflows thing, I think is well defended. I think it's a really good way of looking at it and thinking about it. Still, it's like any like TAM kind of analysis. This is like back of the napkin type stuff, right? Like it's based on a lot of assumptions. And then we take those numbers, which are based on assumptions, and then do more assumptions on top of it to do the price impact thing. So like, it's more just of a way to think about it. I think we wanted to see what impact we could ascribe gold's investment product launches to, like what parallels there might be. And that's a way to do it. To be honest, it's extremely hard to calculate inflows, regardless of ETFs, like inflows into Bitcoin, net new money, and what it does to price. I've seen 1 or 2 academic papers that have looked at this, and it's, first of all, it's very hard and tricky. I'm not sure I liked either methodology that much, but things like liquidity matter, right? Like how much can we actually put in Bitcoin right now without skyrocketing the price? Liquidity is pretty thin right now in general. I think in Bitcoin terms, September on exchanges was the lowest month since like December 2016.
Wow.
So
it's
like
been a long bear market.
Yeah, like it's so there's not a lot of Bitcoin for sale and not a lot of Bitcoin changing hands. So that obviously would impact the flows analysis. I mean, we just have to wait and see. It also could take longer than we think, or it could take a long time for flows to actually happen, right? Like I think that once, if these are approved, then the next thing we'll be watching for is, okay, well, how much money is going into them, right? I think for now, like we just think the market's not worried about that. We'll sort of get there when we get there. But I mean, we'll be updating and looking at it as it happens. I agree. I mean, 75%, again, meant to be conservative. Really, like, I feel a lot more confident in our inflows analysis generally than I do on the price impact, because I know there are a lot of factors that either we we just chose not to do for that price impact analysis, or literally can't figure out how to do. Like,
you can't know. Like when it starts running,
right.
We all know the craziest stuff can happen.
It becomes a positive feedback loop too, because when the price goes up, the liquidity increases. When the liquidity increases, people can buy in bigger size, right? So there's a whole, and then of course it's an advertising for itself, right? I mean, nothing is better advertising for Bitcoin than its price going up. That's always been true.
These are physically backed, these ETFs. Where will they get their Bitcoin from?
That's a good question. I don't know necessarily specifically the firms, but most of them, I believe, most of them, I think maybe all of the ones I've seen on the S1s except Fidelity are all going to custody with Coinbase, and I think they're all going to use OTC, market makers effectively. Like there's going to be private, so they're not. I don't believe they're going to be going out to exchanges, right? Because the create redeems get done by specific designated parties, right? And they are typically large market making firms.
Yeah, but so the thing I don't understand, you'll know this better than me, is that say there's a massive amount of inflow of people trying to buy the ETF, right? They don't buy the Bitcoin before it. They buy it against the price. They buy it at the time that the ETF is bought.
Yeah.
But can there be a time lag? Could there be a lack of availability of Bitcoin at a certain price? Can the price change suddenly very quickly, and the price you buy the ETF has to reprice?
Yeah, so some of this was in the amended S1s talking about like dislocations between the net asset value and the underlying spot. But this is one of the things that makes ETFs really good as products, generally speaking. So like a mutual fund typically only has daily create and redeems, right? Like you can hit sell, but like they don't even start to cut the check till market close. The ETFs can be created and redeemed throughout the trading day, right? So which makes them better tracking products, right, in the scheme of things. I don't actually know if they can create and redeem like overnight. Typically, the ETFs may not trade except during market hours. So you could have a situation where like a lot gets created or redeemed right at the beginning of the day to make up for underlying spot moves or something, and demand that shifts the prior night. I don't know. But I think as far as like tracking vehicles go, ETFs have been shown to be excellent. So but it's a global 24/7 market. But I think if you go and look at the ETPs and ETFs and other markets, you'll see they mostly the spot ones that, the ones that work like American ETFs, which there are some that do. They mostly do pretty well. They track pretty well.
All right, last question, because I'm going to let you go. It's a big one. Is an ETF good for Bitcoin?
I'm on the side of yes, okay, but I recognize this is this is really a big question and a great question. I think it's very reasonable for Bitcoiners to be suspicious of the institutionalization of Bitcoin, right? Because we want Bitcoin to be for everyone. We want it to be something that you can run in your house, on your home, on your phone, right, without the use of intermediaries. And it is that today, to be clear. I think that's what gives it its value, right? I think that's the core value proposition, is the freedom and right to transact, store, hold your own keys, right, and your own coins. That is essential for Bitcoin. So that is Bitcoin, to be clear. And the ETFs are not that, right? By definition, you're literally having someone else store, hold, send, receive your Bitcoin. They're more about financial exposure to the asset. So I get the criticism. It's legitimate criticism. I think that what we have to, the reason I think yes, they are good, is because if you believe in Bitcoin becoming global, widely accepted money, it needs to be everywhere that money is. So banks need to hold, store, accept Bitcoin, right? Money market funds should have Bitcoin, right? ETFs should have Bitcoin. Directional investors should have Bitcoin, right? Like PayPal and fintechs should have Bitcoin. Apple Pay should use, it should actually be everywhere, not nowhere.
And this could trigger all that.
That's what I think. I think it dramatically enhances the ownership of Bitcoin, period, right? And it also dramatically increases the liquidity of Bitcoin, which helps volatility come down, which also ultimately helps Bitcoin become money, becomes medium. What's that? I don't believe in this as a strong criticism, but people think that Bitcoin's volatility makes it a bad medium of exchange. And if it's a bad medium of exchange, it's not money. That's what a lot of people think. I certainly don't believe that. I think money is bigger than just for buying coffee, right? Like it's bigger topics at work here, but volatility will also come down. It will become better money if everyone on earth, they don't have to own it. They have to have considered owning it, right? They have to have decided what they think about Bitcoin, and this makes it much more possible, I think. But I said this last time I was on your show, like if the like memes and values that underlie Bitcoin's core foundation don't remain widely understood, adopted, promulgated, then the founding actual technology things that they actually describe may not remain in the protocol. So it is essential that Bitcoiners continue to educate, their friends and families, people that may buy this ETF, right? It's work we've done. We're doing a lot of work to educate the world about why Bitcoin is valuable, and it's not just number go up. It's the core fundamental features and values. That's why I am heartened. I mean, when I look at the issuers, like who are out here, like I know people at these companies, and they know and care about Bitcoin. They do. Okay, so like, but this is a narrative, an educational battleground, and we don't want the only Bitcoin in the world to be owned by intermediaries. Like there's no doubt about that, right? I mean, it's just, look, it's going to get interesting. It's you got to climb a wall of worry, right? The risk used to be like another Mount Gox could happen. Now the risk is like, oh no, the world's biggest asset managers control Bitcoin. Like there's going to be more of these, and I think Bitcoiners just have to buckle down. They have to use Bitcoin, promote Bitcoin, talk about and spread its values as far and wide as they can.
Yes. I'm with you, Mr. Thorn. All right, cool. When do I see you next? Are you coming to Texas next week?
Oh, I can't be in Texas next week. No, I wish I could. But I was, I don't know, maybe in Nashville. You're going to be back in Nashville sometime soon. I try coordinating. I'm definitely coming to the UK
in April.
For a cheat code in April. Yeah. It's going to be right around the halving. I'm excited.
Yes, my man.
When are you back in New York?
I think it's about a week before. It's going to be about a week before it. Yeah. I don't know yet. So I've got.
You got to get the miners to turn on the hash rate so that they push the date forward.
Mate, I'm trying. I'm asking. We're in Africa in December.
Oh wow.
Canada January, and I don't know the New Year schedule, but look, we're always passing through New York, so I'll probably see you there.
This is not the same like doing it remote. I mean, we can do it.
I know it sucks, doesn't it?
I love it in person. I know you know that. You do too.
I do. We would have gone on for 3 hours. You would have wrapped. Danny would have been there.
You're totally right.
But there's a problem. You run a football team, a podcast, you make documentaries. Like something has to give, and it's a couple of interviews a month remotely now. So it is what it is. All right, brother. Listen,
I'm always happy to talk to you, Pete. Hope to see you soon. Yeah, man.
Yeah, hopefully New York or Bedford, but we'll catch up somewhere.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Pete.